Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, Anita Finley.
Good morning, Darwin.
Good morning to you.
Happy
Normally,
4th.
I would wish you a happy 4th of July, but under the circumstances, I'm going to wish you a safe July 4th.
Okay.
I'll just bring you quickly up to date on New York. It's a very strange thing. Just as we are speaking now, some of the best trained snipers, in fact, the best trained snipers in the world, are positioning themselves at strategic points around Manhattan, and police are turning out in droves with bomb-sniffing dogs, and that all has to do with a terror alert in New York, and I don't know if it will materialize. We hope it will not, but it puts a damper, I think, on things. One said, New Yorkers, celebrate your independence because it will be your last day on this earth. You know, friendly greetings like that.
Who said that?
Well, who knows? You know, terrorists. It's a horrible time. Even as we're speaking now, Britain is led by the Queen is mourning its dead on those beaches in Tunisia, and so it's a tense situation in New York. All the broadcasts have been filled with nothing but, you know, be safe, celebrate, but be safe. So that's where I'm calling from a rather tense city this morning, you know.
But they're not on Staten Island. They're not going to bother you there, are they?
Well, we hope not. You know, we certainly hope not. Usually Manhattan has been the target because that's where you get the most publicity, you know. 9/11. It's a terrible, terrible time. But I think down in Boca Raton, you're not on the target list, so you'll have a great 4th of July.
Listen, I'm going to be working on finishing our July issue in my office, so I'm going to be oblivious to anything else.
I want to talk to you about a curious thing that is happening. As you know, I released 2 books within months of each other. One was basically on Ronald Reagan and his 2 wives called Love Triangle, and my new release coming out now is on Peter OToole. And I remember once discussing when you were in New York about the Peter OToole book, and I wondered what its reception would be. I thought, well, I don't know whether Americans are interested that much in Peter OToole. Certainly they are in Britain, and that is proven true. But I thought the Reagan book would, because it dealt with his Hollywood years, which is the really virtually undocumented part of his life, I thought it would take off, and Peter OToole would be an also-ran. Actually, you cannot estimate what the public's interested in. It is Peter OToole that is making the big splash more than Reagan. I'm amazed almost.
Well, let me just tell you, I have been getting into the book. Of course, all your books are huge, but I'm fascinated by his life. I did not know anything other than, you know, his big movie, but he was quite a character.
Yes, I'll give you an example of how the 2 subjects of Reagan and OToole have been treated. The Daily News in New York and the New York Post didn't write any major feature about Reagan and his women, but the Daily News has already published a big splash on OToole, and tomorrow morning the vans will go out with an enormous thing the New York Post is doing on Peter OToole. They had one article, and then they called me and said, we're going to double it, and then they called again and said, actually, we're going to triple it, and they're running a big splash. And mainly, they're interested in the A-list women that OToole seduced. Now, he was a very handsome and charismatic movie star, and particularly, you know, running pictures of Princess Margaret Rose, the so-called black sheep of the House of Windsor. They had a long affair, and he even had an involvement with Sarah Churchill, who was Sir Winston's daughter, and the notorious Duchess of Alba. There was a famous movie made about the original Duchess of Alba, starring Ava Gardner. You know, she was famous for posing for that the Goya's Naked Maha, and also, now talk about A-list women. How about Elizabeth Taylor, Ava Gardner, and Audrey Hepburn? That's really dating from the A-list, wasn't it?
I would say so.
And so they're featuring all that, and then there were bizarre side detours. She's still alive today. April Ashley, who was the most famous transsexual in Britain, and she's still alive today. That was a side detour he took. Of course, transgendered women are all in the news now with Caitlyn Jenner, you know, the former Bruce Jenner.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw the cover of Vanity Fair.
Yes.
A fairly good-looking woman, a rather good-looking woman at the age of 65.
Well, he was a good-looking man.
Yeah,
so you start with something good, you know, how much it's okay. You can't start with ugly and make it into that.
Right, and also wardrobe, makeup, surgical work on the Adam's apple. I didn't know that was possible, by the way. Surgical adjustment of the Adam's apple. I never heard of that surgery before. And so
Darwin, I heard that the physician who was her physician also is a transgender. Did you know that?
Well, transgendered is certainly, maybe one day we'll talk about what's going on in that world. By the way, I didn't mean to get off on Jenner, but she's a very multi-millionaire, but her gross estimate for the coming year with endorsements and things, she's slated to make $500 million, which is...
it's a nice piece of change.
That is indeed. So used to transgendered people were shunned, but now they're sort of all the rage. But here's what I really want to talk about. I have run into a cultural war problem with the Reagan book. I thought at first that since I deal with his so-called horn dog days as a handsome Hollywood movie star, I thought people on the right might object to that. But curiously enough, it's the attack is coming from the left. Liberals who claim I have made this awful conservative politician a glamorous figure. Well, actually, he was a glamorous figure. I mean, if you're dating Lana Turner, I knew three of his girlfriends, Joan Blondell, Susan Hayward, and Lana Turner. If you're dating some of the most beautiful women in the world and you're a handsome movie star, then you are a glamorous figure. But the period that I write about, he was a liberal Democrat. And it was I understood some of the reluctance of people with Reagan. It was explained a bit on the Bill O'Reilly, you know, who is the most famous and widely watched newscaster in America today on Fox News. And he writes, or rather his ghostwriter writes, one bestseller after another, you know, Killing Jesus, Killing Patton, Killing Kennedy. And his September release is Killing Reagan. Of course, Hinckley didn't actually kill Reagan. And but now you would think any bookstore would rush to buy these books stock them. But he said on the air, he said they're not ordering Reagan books. And he said many people who run bookstores are very liberal, and they're almost boycotting my Reagan book. Now, I'm amazed. If I ran a bookstore, I wouldn't have to agree politically. If the book was selling like hotcakes, I would stock it, you know.
Right.
And so he said he was running into problems getting his Reagan book stocked. So there is the hate mail coming in on Reagan is just horrible. I guess I hadn't really thought about what a polarizing figure he was, but because now when you hear him referred to, usually by a Republican, they seem to revere him as a god. But
this is an amazing story that you're talking about. This is, by the way, you're listening to Darwin Porter, who's calling in from Staten Island. He's our celebrity writer, and I'm Anita Finley, and this is very, very interesting. It is July 4th, and so I do have a question for you, though, talking about Reagan for 1 second. How did was he the first actor that ever became a politician, becoming governor? Was that the first person like that?
Well, actually, his best friend, you're a very young woman, but George Murphy was a famous movie star, and song and dance man, and
yeah, I remember him.
George Murphy.
Oh, he became a senator, didn't he?
Yeah, and he was a senator until they voted him out of office when he once ran for re-election. So guess what he did? In revenge, he moved from California to Florida.
I didn't remember that.
If California doesn't like me, I'll go to Florida. And so he was the one who got Reagan into government. It suggested that he run for governor of California.
Oh, and I didn't know the history of that. I forgot. You had it in your book, but I forgot.
And so, but what is happening? There is a store in Palm Springs that I think sells more of my books than anywhere in America, and they keep ordering cartons of them, but they found resistance. The Peter OToole book is really selling there. All the other books sold, but there was resistance to Reagan. In fact, some people said, how dare he glamorize Ronald Reagan like this? But then a strange thing happened. The book started to sell, but the store owner reported these books were selling to people who had never, on Reagan, were selling to people who had never bought my books before. A whole new crowd of readers were buying the Reagan book.
Good.
And I sort of understand that, It wasn't my usual readership, in other words. It was a newer market I had tapped into. And many people that I thought would attack me on the right, I think they're sort of interested in reading about a man who was during a period of when he was such a glamorous figure. And because usually we have a picture of him in the 80s when he was nearing the end of his life, and but he was a hot young man, and I'm so glad that I have documented his life, because I was privy to a lot of information that had never been published before. And my opinion about that is John F. Kennedy's early life has been explored in great detail, and Ronald Reagan certainly looms as one of the 10 most famous men of the 20th century. So, I mean, I think it's in addition to being an exciting story, it's a good. It belongs to be told, because both Nancy and Ronald Reagan more or less glossed over their Hollywood years. They moved on to greater things and used that as a sort of a side detour.
Has his son ever contacted you? Did you ever hear from him about the book?
No, but I got a autographed book from Michael Reagan.
Oh, did you really?
Michael Reagan was not his blood son. He was adopted, but he's not a blood son. But the Nancy once said that the Reagan books written by her children didn't sell at all, and I don't. So a lot of people have. I mean, Reagan today is not universally admired, although he has millions and millions of fans. The one thing that surprised me, though, about Peter OToole is I'm sort of amazed that the American media are so interested in OToole. I mean, Lawrence of Arabia was released in 1962. Well, that's a long time ago. Now, OToole went on to make 91 movies, and I've seen every one of them because of modern technology. There was a time 5 years ago I couldn't have access to that many movies, but I've seen every one of them now. And he remains a sort of a great interest. And with him, unlike Reagan, was Reagan a horn dog when he was a young man and a conservative politician, everybody just accepts the fact that Peter OToole was one hell of a Hellraiser.
Well, probably one of my favorite movies of all time is Lawrence of Arabia. And I really, after I watch it again, it's amazing, though, how the history that all happened in the Middle East is still very appropriate. Yes,
I was, fortunately, I once wrote Frommer's Morocco with my co-author, Danforth Prince. And fortunately, I was privileged to get a lot of information about when the crew moved to Morocco. And I came across a story way down in South Morocco where when OToole was down there filming a battle scene, he actually attended a slave auction. I mean, how many people? Well, of course, you know that slavery still goes on in the world today. I mean, a lot of people don't know about that, but slavery is not dead in certain parts of the world. But how many people attend a slave auction? And I'm not laughing about that. It's a terrible thing. But
no, but that's right. He's just that kind of character. Well, I want you to ask about this. So, was he bisexual?
No. I have no real evidence of that. I'm not suggesting that on one drunken night.
No, I understand. But I was just curious because he must have attracted a lot of gay men.
Yeah, now that's another question. In addition, I call, the same thing happened with Ronald Reagan. Both of these men were pursued by gay men.
Sure.
But that would be true of any good-looking actor.
Sure.
Warren Beatty, Robert Redford, and OToole was pursued by men like Lord Lawrence of Olivier, John Gielgud, men like that in the British theater. But that would be true, though, of almost any heterosexual actor. And one girlfriend of OToole's told me he was always very, very kind to them, but he preferred what he called my wenches, which is a rather derogatory British term for women you pick up in bars.
Well, and I want everyone to know that our July issue is going to have a picture of Peter OToole from the book that Darwin is speaking about right on the cover. And it's extreme.
The one unfortunate fallout of Peter OToole was his wife of 20 years, who is alive today, Sean Phillips, who is a brilliant actress from Wales. And the trouble of being married to Peter OToole is he might not come home one night, and you would not hear from him again for another 6 weeks.
Oh, my.
And then he would come home to his home in Hampstead, in the London section, but he wouldn't tell you where he had been. And his famous line, which I used in the book, was, "My greatest thrill in life is to go out pubbing in London on a Friday night and wake up in Mexico."
Funny. Well, so he drank a lot.
Well, he did until he couldn't, and he had an operation. He had sort of a life-threatening operation in 1975 with his great deal of his intestines removed, and after that, just even a beer could. He didn't have enough ability to handle alcohol at all after that. So his hell-raising was really confined mainly to his young days, which he called my salad years. That's an old expression that people used to use about their youth. They call it my salad days. And then he had to slow down. But before he did that, I think he had a hell of a life and a fascinating life, and I'm so happy that I had the material to document it. It's just that I'm amazed at the interest in this book, which I felt the interest would be going to Reagan, and it will over a period of time. I'm not saying I've had many experiences in publishing. I found there are hot button people that sell out immediately. I'll name three: Jackie Kennedy, Marilyn Monroe, and Elizabeth Taylor.
Of course. I remember those. I mean, the Jackie O book was that for me was your very best.
And then I have
what's coming up, right? Whoa.
I did a book many years ago on Marlon Brando.
I remember.
And during the first 5 months, it didn't sell well at all. And now I've noticed, I've been told it's out. Its sixth printing has now sold out.
Oh,
so it's one of those books that keep, there is a continuing interest in an iconic figure like Marlon Brando, and they sell month after month, as opposed to a book that is grabbed up immediately.
Yep. Well,
so there are two different responses I've found. But the point is, whether they sell out immediately or sell out over many, many years, they're both ultimately reaching the same,
yes,
a good audience.
And they're going to all your books. And I want to thank you, Darwin, as usual, for being on. I know that in the future we're going to be, and we don't have time to talk about it now, but of course the Clintons are going to be that's going to be the big one. I know that. It's just going to be amazing. So you are amazing, and so is Danforth.
I don't dare. I don't even dare.
So you better go into hiding after you do that one.
I have to. Someone said that I need to, when the Bill and Hillary book comes out in October, I need to go into custody, into what do they call it, police protection.
Yeah, you're going to go into hiding, and I know that, and I won't tell anyone where you are. So thank you, Darwin. Happy 4th, and I'll talk to you again another time.
As they say, a happy, safe July.
Of course. You too. All right, bye.